Okay, so we'll make a start. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Economy, Place, Access and Transport Scrutiny Committee. We have a fairly busy agenda tonight, but a couple of things to raise before we get started. Councillor Pearson and Councillor Nelson are running a little bit late due to travel issues. Welcome, Councillor Burton. And if the meeting is still going on at 7:10, I'll have to vacate the chair due to a work commitment that I haven't been able to change, and Councillor Pearson will assume the position. But let's see how we go. We might not get that far into the evening. So without further ado, I will jump into the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? No, silence is golden. We'll move on. I have two sets of minutes to approve and sign. Do any members have any comments on those sets of minutes? Cool, thank you. Well, in that case, I'll sign away. For once, I haven't got anything to say in them either. Usually awkward, aren't I? Anyway. The next item is public participation, but we don't have anyone registered to speak tonight, sadly. So we end up at agenda item number 4, which is a performance report from Make It York. So would those presenting that report come to the table and introduce yourselves? I think we have some council officers supporting as well on hand for questions too, if needed. Please introduce yourselves also. We'll take the paper as read, but if you do want to give a summary for a few minutes, you're very welcome to. But yeah, all the members should have read every single word of this paper. So fire away, and thanks for joining us.
Sarah Loftus, Managing Director, and Tony Spinks, Head of Finance. So I just really want 8 points to get across. One, it's been a really challenging year with train strikes, cost of living, etc. But our finances, second is our finances are in a good shape now, in good order. We're looking forward to a good result this year and also next year. As you can see from the report, we've strengthened our governance procedures, which is one thing that, previously the council's picked us up upon, but now it's in good order. In terms of our performance, it's strong. As you can see, visitor numbers are high. The tourism sector is worth 1.7 billion to the city's economy, which is great for business. And if you saw in the Yorkshire press today, Christmas has been absolutely fantastic for both retail and accommodation and attractions. So it's good news for York. The fifth is our social media is really strong. Up to December, we had 15.4 million impressions, which is up 12% for last year. So people are really interested in what we're doing in York, another plus point. In terms 6, our number retention is high. Our member retention, it's up at 84%. Our target is 80%. So again, we must be doing something right if people are joining us and retaining their membership at Make It York, particularly during this difficult time. 7th, you'll be pleased, previous scrutinies I've come to, we've had a little bit of trouble about our relationship with the Shambles market. We now have a really good, strong, positive relationship with the Shambles traders, which I hope that they will tell you that is the case. But the best news is the Shambles market has been awarded Traveller's Choice Award 2023 from TripAdvisor. So that's a fantastic accolade for the Shambles market. And we've done that in partnership with the Shambles traders. The last point I wanted to make was we're really currently busy at the moment promoting our city. We went down to London recently with our snooks, an ice sculpture and tansy beetle. I think there's not many people who can have such a fun job that promotes such a great city on King's Cross Station with so many different characters around. And actually, on the station, I met somebody who had lived in York for 42 years, and he told me it was the first time he was proud to be a resident of York. And that, I will remember that for the rest of my life. So we're busy with the Residents' Festival this weekend, the Ice Trail, the Snooks Trail. So it's really, really busy time at the moment. And I hope you see from the report that Make It York has come a long way in the past 2 years. So any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you for that, Sarah. And for what it's worth, I'd like to say that I really welcome the report, and I would share the reading of sort of progress since the last time you guys came to this committee. Last time around, it was a little bit it was up and down. There were pros and cons, but it's nice to see that some of the negatives have been given attention and have had improvements, especially the relationship with the market traders, because that was getting quite tense at one point. So hats off to you there. So yeah, thank you. Do members have any initial questions that they want to raise? I have one or two, but I'm happy to wait. I've got Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo your remarks as well regarding the fantastic improvement that Make It York have made on this. I just wanted to ask something that may relate to the work that's outlined in this report. It's obviously a city centre organisation, and the focus very much on the city centre. But there are a great deal of other tourist attractions and things that people want to come and visit and take note of outside of the city centre. There are a number in my ward, in Fishergate. We've also got the bunker in Acomb as another example. I was just wondering if there's any view to sort of continue to expand and work on opportunities outside of the immediate city centre, and how Make It York can potentially bring the whole city, bring up the whole city in the way you've done with the city centre.
As we're a membership organisation, I know we're a tech company, but members pay a fee to join, so people can join across the city and we will support them. In fact, 20% of our members are outside the city, so we will do campaigns, work with them. So if people want to work with us, they do have to be a member, but membership doesn't cost that much for the value that people get from the membership. So happy to, you know, talk to anybody who wants to get involved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft, and welcome, Councillor Nelson. It's all good. Any further questions? Councillor Fenton.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions from the sort of tourism element of the report. In terms of the stats on the York Pass, there's sort of a decrease in sales. I just wondered what you thought was behind that, in terms of, is it people accessing tickets in other ways? Is it the increasing propensity for sort of digital tickets? So just wondered what was behind that, because obviously there's still strong visitor numbers. I just wondered what the situation was with the York Pass. And then secondly, the report makes reference to some issues with securing permits, particularly for city centre events which require either temporary road closure, for example. I just wondered if you could explain a bit more about what those challenges are in terms of securing permits in a timely manner. Thank you.
For the first one, I think the reason York Pass is down is because in 2022 we were coming out of COVID still, and people hadn't visited the attractions. So I think there was a spike in people buying the York Pass because there was people wanted to go into the attractions, which previously they perhaps felt that they didn't want to. I think that's the only reason. There's a little bit, the cost has gone up a bit, so it could be the pinch of cost of living. But we're kind of addressing that by doing, some cost cutting or some savings at certain times of the year to get footfall into attractions. And it's been mixed this year for attractions, partly to do with the weather. And the train strikes had a massive impact on some of the attractions and the tourism offer in the summer. We can't control the weather and we can't control the train strikes, unfortunately. So that's, I think, the reason behind York Pass. In terms of licensing and permitting, the cost of road closures, etc., has gone up, so that makes it quite hard. And also because of the increase in health and safety, it's just becoming a little bit more bureaucratic for the events industry as a whole. So they're the challenges that we face really on licensing.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Stewart now, and then Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. 3 comments and 3 questions, if that's all right. Okay, so the first comment is it's just about the report and the way it's written, because I just think it makes it a bit too obvious that we have no say on what's happening. And I think, you know, for example, we've got implications. There are no implications. You know, I think it could be worded in a way that, you know, reflects the fact that our great expertise and input will be considered by the executive in due course, is the first comment. Second comment, I do welcome Make It York, so I think it's positive. And the third comment is, I don't know who needs to hear it or who it's addressed to, but I think the SLA is really, really good that Make It York's got. And it's a, you know, obviously we've got the, what it was, what it is now, or going to be, and I remember what it used to be. And it was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous that it was, I don't know, 20 pages of it or something absolutely stupid that City of York Council would say, we've got these experts we're trusting to run our city. I'm going to tell them every single aspect of what they must do. So I think the SLA is really, really good. And it's great that we've got something that's gone shorter. 3 questions if I can. So the first one is, you talk about hopefully, you know, good profits next year and then resuming dividends potentially. What's the level of confidence on that? Because obviously if you hadn't had this insurance payout and also not just insurance payout, but an insurance payout that was a lot higher than you budgeted for, you know, there wouldn't have been a profit this year. So what's the level of confidence going forward about that? Is the first question. The second question is, you've probably been asked this a million times, I'm guessing, but the market that we cram into Parliament Street for Christmas, you know, and to me, we make that whole area absolutely rammed and no one can move and, you know, everything like that. Have we looked at other locations? You know, for example, Micklegate or closing part of Piccadilly or closing part of Gillygate and that sort of thing. To me, bringing, you know, people to another area of the city would make a lot more sense than thinking of other areas where there's markets where they do that. You know, the city centre can, well, the absolute core city centre for me can stand on its own. I'm sure that's been answered a million times, and so I'm sure you'll just bat that away effortlessly. I'll look very silly, but that's my second question. And then the third question is obviously the biggest increase in visitor groups. You know, the countries they're coming from, they're obviously not popping to York for a day or a weekend. You know, in many cases, so the ways to make the best money for people for the city are probably these people are going to stay in the region for days or, you know, a week or something like that. So the question is, how much is there a game changer in what's happening with the mayor of York and North Yorkshire in a few months' time in terms of us doing a lot more with North Yorkshire, or how much is that something that's not, you know, a huge issue potentially for York? Thank you.
First question, how confident am I about what we've put forward in our 3-year budget plan? I think we are confident that we will hit the targets that we've said that we will do in the 3-year budget. Yes, we did receive some insurance money, but we have hit the target that we have said that we would hit this year, and we will hit the target next year. So we are confident. If you were to ask me, will I do better than that? That purely depends on whether York Pass does better, whether we get better sponsorship, whether there's grant funding that we can apply for, whether we're able to sell more marketing space. I don't know. If I did, I'd be a happy person, but I am confident in the numbers that we have put forward, because we have delivered this year and we will deliver next year. I also have a new head of finance who has scrutinised and been brutal with me to make sure that we can hit those figures. And I've got a team now who understand budgets, and, you know, I'm fairly confident that we will deliver. In fact, I'm very confident we'll deliver. Second question. Yes, we've looked at loads of different places for the Christmas market. Part of it depends on access and access for deliveries, you know, and road closures. I think the layout of the market this year was much better. Okay, Saturday and Sundays were a little bit busy, but the feedback that we've had is that people did find it easier to move around. I went to a number of markets in different places in the country. I'm not going to mention them, but I would not pepper pot the Christmas market around the city to a point at which there isn't a Christmas market. It just looks like a few lone chalets. I think we've got it right this year. I think the layout worked. I think that is the way that we should go forward. And I think moving the bar off Parliament Street into Museum Gardens was, you know, a success. And I just think it worked. And the third one was how important the LEP is and the work with North Yorkshire and visitor stay. I think we've always worked very, very closely with North Yorkshire. We've run a number of campaigns with North Yorkshire. In terms of tourism, I think it just strengthens the ability, you know, to work at the York and North Yorkshire level. We have always pushed for longer stays for people to stay in York, visit North Yorkshire and vice versa. So I think in some ways it's business as usual because we've always had such a brilliant relationship. World Travel Market, we went down to World Travel Market with North Yorkshire as our partner. We're doing Berlin Travel Market with North Yorkshire as our partner. So I think it will just strengthen the relationships that we've got because that's what we need to do for the whole of the hospitality sector across York and North Yorkshire.
Thank you for that, Catherine.
Yeah, hi, Catherine Daly, Head of City Development. Just to come in on that last point as well from a kind of City of York Council perspective. So you'll see the economic frameworks on later in the agenda, so we can pick up more there. But essentially, with Sarah and with counterparts at North Yorkshire, we've been charged with coming up with an action plan for the new LVEP, which is a local visitor economy partnership status that we've been given for York and North Yorkshire now by Visit England. So I think we've got an initial target date of the end of March for that joint action plan, which will essentially sit above our tourism strategy and their destination management plan. So we're about to kick off that piece of work jointly, aren't we, Sarah, with North Yorkshire Council. I think your comment's exactly right. I think York's in a brilliant position here because it's the obvious place to stay. And I think where the advantages with the mayoral combined authority could come in future is that we actually need to look at things like transport. So how can people stay in York but travel sustainably to Scarborough or Harrogate or wherever it is for those day visits, but base themselves in York, hopefully, you know, and bring the hotel spend and the evening economy spend as much of that as we can here. So I think it's a really good point and one that we'll be picking up in partnership together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson, I had your hand. I just want to check, is it a supplementary or? I'll say no then. So we'll go Councillor Haley first, and then we'll come to you. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just first of all like to say, from a visitor perspective, the Christmas market, from our family's point of view, was much better than it was the previous year. I think the previous year we went once, it was so crowded, we didn't go back essentially again. So that's good. Second point, you've got a point which I'm not too sure if it's in your papers or the papers that we wrote around accommodation and Airbnb. From your perspective as a promotion of tourism body, how would you accentuate the positives of Airbnbs, given the fact that there's a lot of negativity around them? And I think if you were to ask the average councillor, we would prefer to see less of them rather than more. because they do seem to be, particularly in the city centre, they do seem to be proliferating at quite a rate. And at some point, it's going to start to sort of tip the local services that we've seen, particularly near the university. So you start to lose things like school places, shops that aren't designed for students, etc., etc. So how would you convince us that, you know, they're good for the city?
Well, we've got a lot of good Airbnbs, and you know, a lot of them are our members, and they have concerns as well about some of maybe poorer quality managed Airbnbs. A lot of people who are in that sector want to have really good, fantastic accommodation, and we do need a mix of accommodation, both, you know, hotels and Airbnbs, because sometimes they work very, very well for families who want to be together. What we've always said is, as a DMO, we welcome regulation into Airbnbs, because that should maintain the standards of Airbnbs. And that's what we need to do, is to make sure that we have quality Airbnbs in this city, and we clamp down on the ones that don't perform how we want them to perform.
Thank you. Just coming back to the Christmas market, you can decide whether it should have been a supplementary or not. I noticed in your report, you wrote that there was, I think, 200 applications for stalls on the Christmas market. And I would like to say I agree that I think the flow and the movement around the market were much better this year. Obviously, it means that there's a lot less on offer in terms of the number of stalls and the number of traders. So I was wondering if you have kind of a process that you go through in terms of what you're looking for, who gets a market stall, who doesn't, and whether you kind of, on reflection after this year, you feel like you got the balance right, or whether you think there's room for improvement in that next year, and how.
Yes, we do have a process of how we select. And this year we've been much more mindful about the types of stalls that are on the shambles market, because we don't want to, you know, destabilize the shambles market. So we look at the mix on the shambles market and say, what can we have on the Christmas market? Our market has purely Yorkshire products, and people operating from Yorkshire. That's a decision that we've made as well. And a number were, you know, York based. We also provided Indy York with a chalet this year, so that independents could use that on a regular basis, which I think went really, really well. And I know some of the businesses want to come on the market next time. Out of those 200, some are stores and products that we wouldn't want, because we want to have good quality. I think there's always room for improvement, and we will look at the mix again next year to make sure that we have a good balance of everything. We do go and look at other markets, and we do listen to what other people say about other markets, you know, which are too heavily based on selling alcohol and food. We try and get a mixture. We can always do better. We're always interested in people telling us what different stalls do they want on the market that would, you know, make it interesting. So always open for new ideas. Yes, we have a strict criteria. If we could expand into a different area which still had a nice feel or a kind of different feel, we would look at that. It's just finding that space that doesn't disrupt traders and local retailers, because that's not what we want to do either.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. It'd be really interesting if that criteria was kind of shareable. I don't know, just out of interest. If not, don't worry. In terms of the fact that, you know, I noticed this year there was a lot of York traders on the market, which is obviously a wonderful thing. On the other hand, the balance that I noticed is that there's a lot of the Christmas market, or a certain amount of the Christmas market was people who were also present, you know, have shops in York. So I suppose from the local perspective, how do you kind of approach that balance in terms of actually having people on the market who aren't in the city? I appreciate that equally the market's where the trade goes. and that's why everyone wants a stall on it. But, you know, I feel like there's a balance to be struck between bringing people in who aren't in the city, because the residents don't necessarily need 3 different places to buy York gin, even though York gin is wonderful, with supporting our local businesses.
I think because we're very proud to be Yorkshire and York, and you know the local businesses see it as a way of having a bigger footprint, and that's why they do it. If they didn't see it as having a bigger footprint, they wouldn't do it. A few businesses this year have said, no, we just want to be in our shop. Others have said, no, we want to be out, you know, outside on the Christmas market. It's just getting that balance right. You know, maybe we could improve our balance. I think it worked quite well this year. I think the York Indie store worked really, really well because it was a changeover. And also not all the chalets are there for 6 weeks. Some are there for 3 weeks and then they have a changeover. So that's another thing we could look at to accommodate, you know, more variety, and also for people to come out and, you know, especially residents, have a more round, because there's different offers on place. I don't know from the evaluation, I haven't seen it yet, what response we got, but all the stores gave a discount to local residents. We do try and push that. This year it was a standard cost across all, whereas last year some did 5%, some did 20%. This year it was a standard percentage. And if you ask me now, I can't remember. There's too much that's in here sometimes, but that's what we thought would work better, a simple percentage across the piece.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Jane Burton.
Hi, I've got a few questions. First of all, how did the hidden gem spaces go that you set aside? Were they monitored at all?
Yes, and they went well. That we worked with the hidden gems attractions, and they reported back, yes, it did work. We just thought that that was a good way to include more people in the Christmas market, because we don't want it just to be about the Christmas market. We want it to be about Christmas in York, so that people will go to different areas and, you know, celebrate what we have in the city, and also to reduce the overcrowding. So I think we can develop that more next year, if I'm honest. Well, this year.
Yeah, it's good to see you doing it. And I noticed in the service specific requirements, and I don't know what page, it's actually page 51, one of the supporting the York, our city centre vision, you've got the family friendly and all these things, and then over the page, but it's at least it's there, a safe city centre which is welcome and accessible to all, and that's really good to see. You're involved with the hotel trade, and I just wondered how much emphasis is given to making some of the rooms accessible in the hotel rooms in York.
We sit on the Hotel Association for York, Hay. I think that's probably one question to the hoteliers rather than me, but in other areas where I've worked, we've been able to develop grant schemes that have allowed people to match fund developments within, you know, bed and breakfast, small hotels, to enable that to happen. So that's a solution, you know, and maybe through, you know, the new LVEP and the mayoral authority with having funding available could be something that we could look at in terms of making things more accessible, because it will be the cost that is the issue rather than anything else.
I know, for instance, the IHG group of hotels have been doing it for absolutely years, since, you know, the mid 2000s. So, but they're a big group, and I think they've recouped money because people can finally go away on holiday who couldn't before that. So that's good to know. One last thing. So York's brand, that's on the objectives, and one of the objectives is to contribute proactively to the city vision of being more affordable, more accessible, more sustainable and fairer for future generations to enjoy and residents to benefit from today. That's a great thing, I think, because I think so many people feel left out of their city and that they don't, that it is just for tourists. I think that's a great thing. But then on C, you're also working towards increasing the value of the visitor economy and attracting higher spending visitors. Do you see that at all as a conflict? Or do you think, I mean, I don't see why you can't do that together. I just wondered how you thought of approaching that.
I don't think it's conflict. I think ever since I've been in post, we've been trying to say to residents, it's your city, come and enjoy the activity. The next few months is going to be full of free activity for people. We've got the Residents' Festival this weekend, the Ice Festival, the 3rd and 4th of February, another fantastic free event for people. And then this year on the 2nd and 3rd of March, we've got the Snook Trail that's running for 8 weeks. Then following that, we've got the Tansy Beetle Trail that actually goes out into communities as well. So we're really trying to kind of celebrate and get people coming into the city. Because my view is, you know, about placemaking is if residents don't use their city, if we ever have pandemics or anything again, all the shops will disappear and we won't have a city. So it's really important that local spend and that local enjoyment of a city. It's critical, I think, to survivals of towns and cities. So we have to work. But also, if you look at the value of tourism, and especially international and people coming to stay, that allows us in York to have lots of independent shops, lots of independent residents. So we have to get a balance between both. And hence what we're trying to do is get the tourists to come to York that really value our city. And, you know, they don't leave anything behind. They just take some things away and they really look after the city and they promote it as a really nice place to stay. So I think we can get that balance right. And I think it's about working together because you have to have residents proud of their city as well. And that knocks off onto visitors.
Absolutely. No, it's good to hear. And also, I think this UNESCO designation as well, making more people aware of that. I don't think I actually realised until I became a councillor that we had. I think I did, but there's not. We don't know enough about that, and I think that brings a lot of positivity, doesn't it, to the city as well. It's how to get it out there. I noticed you have a lot of hits on your Make It York, but Visit York has a lot more, and you obviously work together with them to sort of swap, you know, what you're doing.
Yeah, as an organisation, we are both Make It York and Visit York, so we use both platforms to promote everything. So yes, the UNESCO, we need to push more. We're working with different partners, the BID, the Guild of Media Arts, City Council, to look at how we use that UNESCO status to our advantage and promote media arts in the city, both to get young people involved in media arts as a career, but also to celebrate the success and that we're one of the leading places in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got 2 hands and then I'll come in with a question and then we'll wrap this item up if that's okay. Councillor Ben Burton, was that a supplementary or a new one? Can I come back to you then? I'll go to Councillor Healy first. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Chair. Super quickie, what's Snoop that you keep referring to?
I could show you the picture, but go on the website. How I describe it is if you ever heard of the Imp Trail or the Bee Trail in Manchester or Elephant Trail in Sheffield, the giant structures of animals that are painted in different colours. They're sponsored by private sponsorship. We have an auction and then the charity partner receives the money from the auction. For York, we decided to create a new character for York. rather than perhaps use a Roman or a Viking or something. So we decided to go out and ask some graphic designers to come up with a new character. I want this character to be big as the Gruffalo. It's a kind of really nice little monster holding a book, because we know how important the libraries are and how well the libraries are used in the city. So we've been working with Explore, so it's Outdoor in World Book Week. We want young people or anybody to think of a new story because it's a new character, so they can think of a new story, a new poem, and they can really recreate them whatever they want. And they're about 6 foot tall, 3 foot wide, 3 foot in depth, I think. They won't go through a normal door. And there'll be 20 around the city, all differently painted, some representing what the city's about, some representing books, all sponsored by private sector, just to have a free trail around the city for 8 weeks. So they're going to be unique to York. So we need to make it as big as the Gruffalo. So we have a fantastic new story.
There you go. Nothing like clarity, is there? Councillor Ben Burton, cheers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just probably a slightly more negative one, but just so probably enter the offices, I think, as much as itself. Just in terms of it mentions for the Shambles market that 2 shared prosperity fund grant applications refused. I guess refused maybe not the wrong term, but not selected. Always disappointed not to get grant applications when you're applying for them. Is there some kind of lesson learned? Do we know what kind of set us apart as to why we didn't get those?
I don't know the specific detail on that application, but I'm sure we can give some feedback to Sarah on kind of where it didn't score quite as highly as the ones that were successful. So we can pick that up. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And yes, please, if you could and share it with members, that'd be great. I think one of my questions has sort of been covered. I have one other area of curiosity in this. And I genuinely don't mean to come across as unreasonable here, but I know, don't laugh. I know the weather has been cited as a reason as one of the reasons for some of the financial challenges. And I read that and I thought, but it's York, it's the north of England. Are we not sort of pricing that in when we are budgeting? How would you respond to that? Because York's not known for great or even good weather generally. I know we've had some pretty grim storms recently and currently, but yeah, is that unreasonable or? I mean, there's many other cities with probably worse weather than York that managed to sort of navigate a sort of tourism offer and do so successfully. And I'd put us in that bad weather camp generally in the north of England. Yeah, am I digging a hole? Who knows? But I welcome any response to it.
It was particularly bad this summer and tied in with the train strikes. It did really, hit York. And that's the feedback that we've got from people, that it was a particularly wet summer, and a number of outdoor events that normally have good weather in the summer that you anticipate did, pardon the pun, become a bit of a washout. And it was particularly bad. And everybody has said that. I don't know whether or not this year, because people could finally go abroad. We think that a number of people took holidays abroad in the summer as well, last minute. So I think the weather was harsh. What doesn't help is York's very good at dealing with floods. It is brilliant. And it doesn't help when we get the publicity that kind of implies that we're shut when it floods, because we're not shut. And we have an excellent track record. The businesses are brilliant at dealing with floods, and we need to shout that we're not shut for business, because we know that as soon as it floods, there's a news story that goes out. Sometimes photographs are used of previous occasions rather than the actual occasion, and then hotels get cancellations. You know, we are a city who can deal with floods. We've had a lot of practice and we're not shut. And that message really, really needs to be, you know, shouted about when we do have the bad weather, because we still are open.
Thanks for that. And I think that's a good point as well on the still open for business aspect. Yeah, much appreciated. And thanks to members for the questions. We covered different bits of ground there, and I'm wondering about recommendations. I mean, I'd like to raise at least one, and obviously these go to the relevant executive member. So one recommendation I'm interested in the committee's view on is whether we can recommend to the executive member that they work with Make It York and other relevant teams within the council to address this point around improving awareness that York is still open for business during flood events. Obviously, there's probably more pressing concerns during flood events, like making sure people are safe and that people can still get from A to B. But this is part of the equation, and I'm sure that's something that most people could get behind. Any issues with that? Okay, cool. Well, we'll go with that one. And any other ideas from colleagues?
To increase the.
Is your mic on, Councillor Burton, Jane Burton, sorry.
To increase accessible rooms and accessibility within the city. I know there's going to be improvements to the toilets and another there's a revamp of changing places in Silver Street, I think it is. So.
Yeah, okay. I'm just thinking of how we word that. For the executive member to continue to work with Make It York on increasing the number of accessible toilets available in the city centre.
And the places for disabled visitors to stay as well.
Yeah.
Because there are I know there are from friends and things having stayed there, but you know, a few more wouldn't hurt. Often a hotel only has one room. So if there are two people that need a room, they can't stay in the same place necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable thing. And I mean, it sounds like, again, people are pulling in the same direction. It's a question of resource as ever, but I think it's important to get this logged. It makes it clear that we value it as a committee. So I'd happily have that recommendation. Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, just further to that point, I think it's very sensible to have something about getting more accessible rooms, but I just wonder if the recommendation is just to get more, then the executive member could theoretically say, give us one more IHG or whatever we said that they're done, but to the hotel, would it be better to say that our recommendation is we want to know what the barriers to hotels creating more accessible rooms are, and then we can get something back from Make It York or from the hotels via Make It York, which is understanding what they view the barriers are as being, and also how many rooms are not currently accessible that could be, and everything like that. And from that point, you know, we could, because I mean, for example, a barrier could be people wouldn't know where to go on the health and safety legislation, and then Make It York do some pairing with, well, you're in a B&B with 8 rooms, and your B&B down the road with 7 rooms, they found it all okay, so why don't you two meet for a coffee? It could be something, you know, simple as that. Or it could be someone who says cost-wise, we don't think it would stack up. So again, somebody could sort of say, well, on the IHG example, they've done it, they've put the money in, they think it pays off. So a recommendation maybe about understanding the barriers and therefore what can tangibly done could be a better way forward to add on to that.
I think that's a really helpful contribution, Councillor Stewart. I mean, in the official minutes, that gets signed off at the next meeting or the one after. We'll make sure there's a way of capturing that succinctly but also accurately. If we can amalgamate what the 3 of us have raised, I think that would be fitting. And with that, I think I'm all right to move on to the next item if colleagues are. But just want to say thanks again for the report. Well done on the progress and improvements that you've made. And you know, wish you all the best for the future ahead. We'll probably have you back sometime in the next year. But yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it. Cheers. Okay. So now we are on item 5, which is a annual performance report from Greenwich Leisure Limited, who operate the council's leisure and stadium facilities. Same as before, if you want to introduce yourselves, we'll take the report as read, but you can give a few minutes summary if you like. Again, we have council officers on hand to assist with more council relevant queries. And yeah, we'll take it from there. And thanks for being here too, I should say.
Hello, my name's Paul Bickle. I'm the partner manager for York. My colleague here, Tim Besford, is head of service for the North. So he covers Cumbria, Newcastle, Preston and York. So came down on the train today. So yeah, I broke the report down into the different centres to make it quite easy to read. GLL is a staff-owned business, and it has been 30 years now as of last year. But we've also got the Sports Foundation, which is now 15 years old, and we did the launch at the stadium in December, which is really great to see our local athletes being showcased across the country. In December last year, we actually also won got the gold standard now for the Investors in People. So we're definitely there. And one of the big things for me is we had a 5% increase in patronage, which is really quite a good achievement. Our target is 1%. With a stretch of 2, we managed 5, so we're really quite happy with that. One thing we have done though last year was really invest into the centres, and you'll see through the report where we're trying to reduce utility consumption. I'm just done a report now, and we've reduced by 200,000 kilowatts, which is quite an achievement. Hopefully this week we're going to get some funding from Sport England to put solar panels onto the pool roofs. But we are going through the centres, centre by centre, putting LED lighting in and doing whatever we can to make sure it's really good. One of the big ones we did at the UC pool was the pool covers, with the to make it sure it actually looks really quite good in there. Obviously, the centre's 150 years old. Straight away, and you'll see it in the report where the graph is, and it's that sudden drop of a kilowatt usage, which is actually great news. The York Leisure Centre, all three centres went through the Quest Award, which is the Sport England Continuous Improvement Tool, which gives us a really good snapshot. Happy to announce that the stadium got excellent. The other 2 got good, which is a real positive. And we're also working, making sure that all 3 centres get Quest. Burnham's excluded from this. Regarding the stadium, I think one of the big announcements last year was that GLL took over the shares of the SMC, which now quite clearly independent now from the football club. So it's in its own entity. This SMC has been closely monitored by the Sports Safety Advisory Group, and it recently had a inspection by the SGSA, the Sports Awards. And again, a good response. And obviously, some of the good challenges are that we did really well in the World Cup Rugby League. And now, next year, we've got the Women's World Cup in August next year, which is really good news. And I don't know if I can say it, but I will say it. The men's England team will be coming down to York end of February to play in the stadium for an open training session. 3 days. So again, York's on the map, been recognised, the stadium's been recognised not just locally but internationally now, so it's real positive.
Can I please ask on that? Has that been announced anywhere else, or are we breaking news right now?
Officially goes out tomorrow by World
Right.
Rugby, so yes.
That's pretty cool, to be fair. Yeah, sorry, do carry on.
No, that's it really, because obviously you've read the report, so happy to answer any questions.
Can you just clarify the acronyms you were using just then? I'm really sorry. That you took over from SMC or SM?
Yeah, the SMC is Stadium Management Company. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nelson, and thank you for this report. To be honest, when I read it all, I sort of felt a slight guilt. I mean, I was sat there thinking, well, I'm a city councillor, and I'm not aware of half the stuff that's going on here, and it's full of really positive stuff, and I don't say that very often, to be honest. So I think there's got to be something around a better way of communicating everything that's going on, whether it's improving your facilities or the numbers of people involved between the council and GLL. I mean, what is the sort of communication relationship there? Is that something you can comment on?
Andy and I are in regular contact. He's making sure we follow the contract to the T. We have our quarterly meetings, which is again on Wednesday, with all the detail. We have quite a few meetings, haven't we? I think it's all very positive, and if we're going in the wrong direction,
Yeah,
he's on my back.
forgive me, sorry. In terms of communication, I mean like external to the public, to the city. It's clear that the relationship is strong between GLL and the council. I just wonder if there's better ways of telling York what's going on and what opportunities are available, or if you're fairly happy with how you guys go about that. It's not a loaded question.
Yeah, no, I think within GLL, York's seen as one of the better partnerships. Really positive, good news stories coming through all the time, especially about the stadium itself. The whole stadium complex is quite unique. You know, it's used 24/7. There's not very much time when nothing's happening in the stadium. Regarding like hospitality and the NHS using those rooms, it seems good practice. I think in each area is where it's when you've got, we did a big physiotherapy session last year where over 200 people came in to physios. There was health-wise in there and a load of other people. That's seen as good practice and now being shared throughout the whole country. And now they're doing regular bookings with us. So there's definitely going out, probably doing more. There's a lot of stuff going into magazines and newspapers and stuff like that. So it is getting there.
Thank you. Andy, yes, please.
Hi, yeah, I'd just like to advocate that I think GLL do a really good job of getting the messages out. You'll notice, because I hand-delivered them to all councillors in their pigeonholes, an annual summary of what GLL are up to. But certainly, as you read the report, I can almost point to the press releases that have gone for each of the events. So, for example, the swimming pool and the energy use there was a press release done for that. So, yeah, I think we can always do more, and we do it combined. So we do involve the lead councillor as well.
Cool, thank you. Maybe I just need to up my game then. Tim.
Yeah, so I think we need to shout about all the good work we do, and we've got the press stuff. I think what we could probably try and do is a bit more of a digital output with our social media channels. So I think that's something that we could take away to try and push that out a bit more on the social side. But because there's some fantastic work, and I run another 8 partnerships across the north of England, and some of the work that Paul and the team and the council that do in this city is amazing, and we definitely should be flagging it up how great it is. And I do use it a lot as a best case example with my other council partners, because some of the health work and the outputs are fantastic. So
Thanks for that. Councillor Nelson, I've got you waiting at the moment. Yeah, fire away.
Thank you. I really enjoyed reading this. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you. Yeah, it's really positive. And the first question that flagged up for me was, you're investing all of this stuff on like pool covers and things, where are your solar panels? And I think you just answered that question. Really look forward to seeing that. I think that'll make a big difference as well. It probably won't surprise you that the bit that I really want to hear more about is the GLL Sports Foundation. I, as a councillor who lives very close to Energize, was unaware of it, if I'm honest. And I would really like to know a bit more than what's in the report about how it's going to operate in the city, plans for it, and how we can kind of tie in with you, work together with you around that foundation for the benefit of all of our residents.
Yeah, so the Sports Foundation we were launched in December, and the closing date is 20th of February. All the PR's gone out on it so far, including the council's press release. It's an opportunity for young individuals who are on a certain level to it gets costly, doesn't it, going to training and such, and going to these competitions. So GLL has 3 different stages, and a lot of it is about getting free access to the facilities to train, or money towards going for travelling. There's about 600 people on it. It's quite big. It could be better. I would love for the message to get pushed out, especially in York, because it doesn't cost us anything. And it's sponsored through our subcontractors who contribute towards it. So again, I'm happy to send out more information across.
Can I ask about the second bullet point on the report in relation to it? Because obviously the bit about kind of supporting individual athletes is wonderful, and I will do everything I can to increase the comms on that. When did you say it's open until February?
Yeah, open 20th of December to the 20th of February. So yeah, a few more weeks.
Bullet point number 2, to bridge the gap in sports inequalities. I was wondering whether is this all about individual young people with kind of athletic talent, or is there an element of this, I suppose, which is about more community-based work, perhaps in the areas of York, with the least uptake in sports, or, you know, anything like that?
It is on a higher level of activity. People representing their region, their country. But we could, where we can, we try and do things locally, a centre-based partnership. So we do.
Can you set up a second sports foundation so that we can all chip into it, please?
Well, I think with GLL, we're about to launch a library one, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that's because obviously we run libraries as well. So that'll be really good. So yeah, one thing at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you very much for this report, and I'd like to echo the positive remarks made by other members. I just want to ask a specific question regarding the stadium management company, the SMC. I can see that the full equity transfer completed, the transfer of the ownership of the company to GLL following its ownership by City of York's Football Club, who previously had full ownership of the SMC. I just wanted to know about what ongoing relationships were like with the City of with York Football Club, particularly when it comes to things like balancing between the multiple things that happen at the LNER Stadium, whether there's been any, because it's a big transfer, you know, it's a club worth an area worth a lot of money, a company worth a lot of money, and the equity transfer isn't just like a bank transfer. So I'd just like to understand if there's any problems from that, any lessons learned, and what the ongoing relationship with York City Football Club is like.
The whole concept was to make the SMC independent, to be fair, as it was already fair, you know, very independent, separate board. The SMC are there purely to run the stadium as safely as possible. That's their primary focus, and it has done that very well. It came under scrutiny first few years, but it definitely with new personnel that's gone in there, it's done really, really well. The relationship with both clubs and the other tenants of the stadium as well, things like the NHS, ourselves, People Against Cancer, is positive. Everything has a challenge. It's making sure that people understand the contract that they've signed. Understood it. You know, the NHS are in the hospitality areas Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 5:30. It's their contractual right. It's great for the NHS, great for training, all their training needs. We then pull it out to make sure that that whole area is converted back ready for football, you know, or rugby, 7:45. Things can improve, and they are improving. We're also looking at transport, the catering, all those ticketing systems being replaced. We've been issues with that, but again, it's moving forward, and we are working really well with the new football club owners.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Fenton, then Councillor Hook, and then Councillor Healy.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I should have declared an interest as a member at Energize, who doesn't go as often as he should, but it's a great facility, and it's certainly a very sort of inclusive place for people to go, and there's no, you know, you don't have to be super fit to exercise in the gym there. In terms of a question on the stadium, in terms of SMC and GLL's new role, what opportunities are there to liaise with bus operators and others in terms of making it easier to get to and from the stadium by public transport, and not just on a kind of a match day, because I know that has been a sort of a bit of an area that's been a cause for concern since the stadium opened. And then just to say in terms of spreading the word and improving communications, the Energise Centre manager came along to our ward committee meeting. No, we didn't invite her, but she took the initiative and came along and was engaging with residents about, well, what things are happening at Energise, and that was really good to see. Sort of members of the team sort of proactively going out to those kind of places where people are, to let them know about things that are available on their doorstep. So if you can sort of pass on my thanks, and I'm sure we can all think of places where people are who, you know, the team can go and interact with and leave some leaflets or flyers or just talk to people. But that was really good.
Regarding travel, we are working with First York. In fact, we had a meeting last week with them and the football club, trying to get as much data as we can from them. We know how many people are coming through the turnstiles, when they're coming through the turnstiles. I really want to match their data with our data. They've agreed to that now, and see how we can communicate that better to the fans and to the club itself. So yeah, positive meetings going forward. It's not perfect, we know that, but we're working on it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. This is all really good. I'm interested in the health-wise side. Do you feel that the doctors and medical practices and anything else medical are really embracing your offer? And do you feel that you've got a lot more capacity for it, or are you sort of now pretty well full up?
We are pretty full up, but we're expanding because of there's a waiting list as such. So we're going to move to increase our team by another 2 or 3 members of staff. It's showing positive results. People, the fact that we've got MSK in at the Burn Home, for example, people can see that, like Councillor Fenton said, it's not stereotypical, isn't it? Everyone's going in there doing exercise, and then once they finish with their physios, they can then come onto the health-wise programme, and that long-term progression to stop them going back into the NHS. It's definitely improving. I think we are expanding, and we've got some more work to do with the NHS regarding. I think we've got pain service coming to Burn Home as well now. So that's again, and then the weight management is about to start at the stadium on the top floor now. So that's, again, things are working really closely. Working with the doctors, we've got a regional health-wise manager that goes in there, speaks to the doctors. A lot of our work is with the hospital there for long term. So,
Thank you. Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. One should be very easy to answer. When the stadium was being planned, there was quite a bit of scepticism that as a unit it would be able to break even and not be subsidised by the council. Does the council have to subsidise the stadium, or does it break even?
Hi, Andy Laslett, Strategic Services Manager. We pay GLL an annual sum to manage the overall package of leisure facilities, including the stadium. When you break it down, there is a net cost to the council of that contract. So technically, yes, it needs a subsidy to be operated. However, we have direct relationships with tenants who we receive income from. So it is very, very close to break even overall.
Second question. I understand that there's quite a big sort of empty section behind the cinema in the whole sort of build space. Have you got any plans to use that, or does the council have any plans to?
Yeah, you're right. There is a unit that the council have a long-term lease on, and that's with our property team, Nick Collins, who's actively seeking people who are interested. Yeah, so it's not part of
It's
the.
not, it's not part of our contract, it's a different building.
Thank you for that. I've got councillor Stewart, then councillor Jane Burton, then councillor Ed Pearson. And if I may, I'm going to run to the toilet, but can we do those questions in that order, please? Councillor Stewart, councillor Jane Burton, and then councillor Pearson. I don't know why that's that funny, really. But yeah, I'm absolutely bursting, but I don't want to hold the meeting up. Fire away.
I was going to rebel by saying you go first, but no, it's so obviously the report talks about the Knights might be in the Super League next year, potentially, which people are not aware is not just them finishing high up the league, or, you know, there might be some change in franchising, regions, and that sort of thing. Do you as an entity have a view on how likely it is the Knights will be in the Super League? Because it's a two-part question. So, because obviously you talk about the planning that may be needed. So the first part is, do you have a view on how likely that is? In other words, as we sit here today, would you say it's 50-50 or 65-35? And the second thing is, if you do have a view on how likely it is, can you share that view? So you can entirely legitimately just answer.
I believe they have a really good chance. I really do. I think they've got the right mentality, they've got the right ethos. The stadium is ready for it. There's a few upgrades that we can do to help them, and we are looking at that for later in the year with like the scoreboard. They're about, to my understanding, about 2 points away. So from the threshold of the 14 clubs that need to be in the Super League, it's anyone's game. I couldn't comment. Dan.
I was about to say supplementary, please, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, just on that point then, is there going to be, if that happy occasion does occur and they do get into that particular league, are there any issues to be anticipated with schedule clashing between the other clubs that use that venue? Particularly, I'm thinking about the football club as well, and how are those managed in general at the moment?
There's a very clear match day agreements of when the football club and the rugby club can play. They're not allowed to cross over at all. So it is down to the two clubs organising that themselves. They can't play on Saturday or Sunday, vice versa. And that is set by the match day agreements, which is very clear what they can and can't do. So hopefully, no.
Thank you.
Was that a supplementary to councillor Stewart? Yeah, okay. Thank you, councillor Pearson. Next, I've got councillor Jane Burton.
I just want to say it was a great report to read. It was so well written as well, and very easy to read, and there's so much positivity in it, and it's great. I noticed you commissioned Accessible to do an audit on all the different places. That was in the last year, yeah. Because I had heard grumbles in the disabled community about the pool out at the community stadium, because it doesn't have steps down, does it? And it does it now? All right. Because I had heard grumbles about this and how it wasn't, but I saw on the website, because the website's great with all the photos too, very accessible. So I just wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah,
That
no,
you didn't plan the pool itself, though, did you, and build it all?
Yes, we were part of the whole design, build and
Oh, right,
maintain.
okay,
So
okay.
the steps going into all three pools are very much like energizer, easy access steps. They're not ladders.
Right.
So they have easy access steps, and the pool. There's a pool pod. It's a machine that can lower you in and out of the pool very easily.
Yeah.
There's a very accessible building, like it is at Energize.
Yes, I use the facilities out there for the blood taking quite a lot, far too often. But that's good to know. And you're making a real effort with that, and that's great to see as well, without being pushed to do so.
For me, it's about making every building we have as accessible as we possibly can make it for everybody. And it was ingrained into when Energize was built, everything on the same level, easy in, easy out. There's always improvements we can make And obviously that's why we've got the access table to come in and do an audit for all 4 centres and working through those audits. And with the council officer as well, who's come in and walked around as well. So hopefully it'll just keep on improving.
It's a joy to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that, Councillor Jane Burton. It's good to see that proactivity rather than having to ask and sometimes do more than ask to raise such matters. Next, I've got Councillor Pearson.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. Yeah, my question is around travel plans and particularly in relation to the consultation at the moment, which is on the local transport plan. Obviously, things like the community stadium are a huge attractor for trips and journeys. I just wondered, where were you in regards to like a travel plan for the stadium? Where has any monitoring work been done on that? And also, have you been involved in, or do you plan to get involved in the conversations around the local transport plan?
There is a travel plan for the stadium. It was part of a planning condition. We monitor it on a regular basis. Like I said, we met first York as halfway through the season to give feedback and to receive feedback. More than happy to be involved in any consultations. I know the rugby club are as well interested, especially with the number 12 service coming from Acomb in the west of York. It's key for them on a Sunday. So if we can be involved, more than happy to do so.
Thank you for that. Next is Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Just coming back to kind of the great ambitions that we have in the city for our sports teams. I was wondering, it got me thinking about the academies and the young players coming through and that progression, and what role GLL can play within that in terms of supporting young people to access perhaps the gym for training as they're outside of their playing, and things like that. And I was wondering if you work with any of the rugby clubs, football clubs, whether you have any kind of relationship with them to sort of support those young people to access, particularly thinking about the fact that Acorn is so close to Energize, obviously. Thank you. And particularly girls' sports as well, making sure that we get them.
We obviously work with the academy, football academy at York City and with York Knights. We don't work with any other club. There's quite a few. But part of the sports foundation is to work with talented athletes. We do have a community sports manager who's about to return from maternity cover, so I'll have a chat with her and see what we can do.
It would be really nice to see perhaps expanding that out to some of the other clubs, particularly in the areas where there might be some, children that want to play, they're good at playing, but maybe they're not being picked up by the Knights or, the big academies in the city because of not having the opportunity to perhaps develop as much.
Yeah, I've got a meeting with Paul Ramsgill on Wednesday, so we can raise that from GLL and the sport and active leisure side of it. So,
can I just ask, is that with girls as well as boys?
Everyone.
Thanks for that. And I welcome the line of questioning, Councillor Nelson. It's probably worth saying as well that there'll be young people who have been picked up by academies but might not be able to sustain that journey, because that's probably the point at which for young people the demands start to ramp up, and probably costs to families ramp up as well, who are driving them everywhere to make their dreams come true. So I think something around that is quite critical, though I appreciate there's tons of local teams out there, probably with a lot of kids who might sort of encounter those situations. But if you could follow that up and work with the council in the best possible way, that'd be really welcome. Do we have any more questions, colleagues? Okay, I mean, I think it's been generally very positive, and once again, I welcome the report and the work that's ongoing. I think the whole committee does. But just for the sake of formality, a recommendation I'd like to raise is this idea. Bear in mind, this is going to the relevant executive member, but they'll be working with GLL through this, is to try and look at ways of supporting young people who might encounter financial difficulties. I don't know, I can't get my words right. It's basically what Councillor Nelson was getting at. How do we help people who could make it to actually get there with a bit of help along the way? We'll find a way of finessing the words if members will give me that license. Obviously, you get to approve the minutes in future meetings. Andy, yeah?
Yeah, it's just probably worth the committee noting that as part of the client relationship, we ask for a sports development plan from GLL, and we agree that with our sport and active leisure team. So it's about maximising our resources and GLL's resources to have a set plan so that we're all working to the same goal. So it's maybe that we could share that with the committee, and that might pick up some of those specific things that you want to know a bit more about.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think, however this minute recommendation ends up being worded, I think what I definitely want to capture is this idea of somehow engaging with other local clubs outside of the main local academies, if that's fair to say. Councillor Nelson?
Can I ask that we perhaps have an emphasis on disadvantage as well, or kind of areas of low participation? Otherwise, you're including, I appreciate we can't really ask GLL to create a club-specific relationship with every club in York. So I just mean, if this recommendation is going to focus it slightly, could I request that we put something in there around participation or disadvantage?
I hear you. My only hesitance is, there could be a kid in Acomb and a kid in Strensall or Haxby or Micklegate that has the talent to make it, but will need support. And I'd be nervous around, just my opinion now, sort of efforts focusing on too narrow an area. But look, as I say, we can bring back the wording of this recommendation, share it with members by email, and we can approve it at the next meeting. I think the main point is we want to make sure disadvantaged kids get the help they need. If their talent suggests that they could make it. But look, I'm sure we could talk for hours about it. I don't want to go around in circles, but I do hear you. We just got to be careful that we don't accidentally exclude. Is that okay? Councillor Nelson?
Yes. To a certain extent, that's what the foundation does as well, if I'm right in understanding the point of the foundation. So I suppose sorry, go on.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose it's about getting that message out there to everybody. It's really hard, isn't it? We've done press releases, we've done it on social media, but we'll work with the council officers as well to try and go to all these clubs, male, female, accessible clubs, to make sure that they hear about it.
And I suppose what my kind of question was perhaps not as focused as just the kids who can make it. It was more about, in the way that GLL obviously has a sort of wider relationship with certain academies, just making sure, more asking whether they can build those sorts of relationships with clubs that are further away, and particularly in areas where there might be less opportunities. And that might then lead to those children being picked up and going into the foundation. But in a wider sense, those kids that are starting to play rugby at Acorn, for example, having something that makes it easier for them to access the gym, regardless of whether they're going to be the next Johnny Wilkinson, which is probably quite old, isn't it? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Nelson. Look, as I say, let me work with officers on a form of words that tries to capture that. I don't want to spend all night designing a form of words by a committee. We're already entering that territory. Robert, were you going to say something, or are you okay? You were near the mic button. That was all.
Yeah, I was starting to wonder what the difference was with the sports foundation, but we then got around to that. So
thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Just to a degree related, but also coming on your point, Chair, about GLL getting out the message about the work. Is it worth having a particular recommendation that we'd like to know more as a committee about what GLL are doing and how. So Andy's obviously very kindly acted as postman and delivered us a leaflet. But if we specifically were to say, look, we'd like to know more about what's going on, so it can just be an ad hoc forward an email. Have you guys seen this thing that we've just announced? I'm not talking about them having to produce additional reports. Just well, I'm saying about forwarding emails to us. You know, have you seen this? What about this? Just to keep us a bit more informed. Is that worth doing? And then we could potentially be putting out the good news or putting out opportunities to people.
Is that something your comms people could do? I mean, it seems straightforward to me.
Yeah, I can quite happy do really good news stories. Email them to Andy to send out to whoever you want.
47 more email addresses for the mailing list. Oh well, I mean, I'm in all councillors, but sure. But yeah, I think that'd be helpful. And then we can be better at spreading the word then. Okay, well, I'm happy to wrap that item up. Oh, Councillor Pearson, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wondered if there could be, just based on the answer we're getting around the local transport plan and the consultation work that's going on there, I just wonder if we need a recommendation around engaging with not just GLL, but other key destinations around the city and trip generators, might be the hospital, for example, that need to be consulted as part of the local transport plan development. I just wonder if that should be something that we should flag at this point.
I mean, I'm not against it. I'm just trying to think of how we'd package that. Catherine, sorry.
I was just going to offer that I can feed that back to transport colleagues anyway, as part of this, you know, the feedback you've given. So even if it doesn't become a recommendation, I'll ask colleagues to pick up directly with the.
Okay. Well, sorry. Yeah, but he's not indicating. But look, again, happy to find a form of words to capture that. The officer said they'll raise it anyway. I'm satisfied on that basis, but thank you. I will wrap this item up now. Thank you both for being here. Especially if you've had a hellish journey. It's not great out there. But yeah, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you both. Yep, I've had a request for a short refreshment break, so we'll do that now. If we can reconvene at 7 PM, that would be great. Thanks all. Okay, so we are resuming tonight's scrutiny committee, and we're on agenda item 6, which is the combined authority economic framework. And it is with sadness that I have to depart the meeting due to an unavoidable work commitment that I've got to go and cycle to in this weather, which is going to be an absolute scream. But Councillor Ed Pearson as vice chair will take it from here, and I think he's going to want a hotly contested election to temporarily fill his vacancy as vice chair while he is chair. So get scheming amongst yourselves, and I'll get going. And officers, thanks for waiting, and I hope it all goes well. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Hello, everybody. Are we back on? Thank you very much. So we're on to, well, first of all, the election of a vice chair. Do you have anyone who would like to nominate themselves or pick on someone?
I nominate Councillor Stewart.
Councillor Stewart, are you happy to be nominated? Oh, do you have to do an all in favour? Yeah. All in favour? That's unanimous. Excellent. Thank you ever so much. So we move on to item 6, which is the MCA Economic Framework report. And I need to introduce the people. Would you mind, because I can't see your name tags all this way, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Of course, that's absolutely fine. Catherine Daly, Head of City Development, and I'm joined by Andrew Leeming as well. Do you want to introduce yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, Andrew Leeming, I'm Head of Strategy at the Local Enterprise Partnership, but in a week's time I'll be Lead Strategy at the Combined Authority.
And Councillor Pete Kilbane, I'm here with my executive member for economy hat on.
Thank you ever so much and welcome to tonight's meeting. Are you wanting to talk through the report?
Well, I think we're assuming people have read the report. I'll just say a couple of words if that's all right.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, as you know, this is the draft economic framework for the new combined authority. It's something that I think Scrutiny have been keen to see. It was agreed at the Joint Devolution Committee just before Christmas. And the purpose of the report is really to ask Scrutiny for any feedback that they'd like to give to the Joint Committee on the content of the framework. And I suppose just for context, as covered in the report, but the purpose of this is very much the clues in the name. It's a framework. It's not a detailed plan or a strategy. It's really to try and provide an early strategic direction for the combined authority until the point that an elected mayor comes in. And I think absolutely acknowledge that the mayor will want probably to come in and create an economic plan. And obviously there will be consultation on that type of document in due course. But the Joint Committee were very keen to develop this framework really to sit above our own economic strategy, which I know the committee looked at last time, and the North Yorkshire economic strategy, and other strategies across the region really, to make sure that there was kind of some connection between those and looking at the common objectives and themes. So really to build upon our local objectives and ambitions. So the framework's illustrated at paragraph 11, and members will see that it's a single page diagram. It's not a detailed strategy document, and Andrew's going to talk through the background to that for a few minutes if members are happy with that. So I think it's absolutely acknowledged that it's high level. There'll need to be specific investment plans developed for each theme, and also that certain objectives and themes will need their own plans. So for example, transport, strategic transport, there will be a strategic transport plan for York and North Yorkshire. So it's within that context. I think Andrew will just introduce the diagram and also talk a bit about the process here on in, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, in terms of the framework, as Catherine mentioned, the idea was to not create something that was all new and different, but to take the existing plans and strategies from each of the authorities and to look to see what those common themes are and to set that framework. So the diagram really sets out 3 ambitions around transition to carbon negative, so a real environment greener priority, deliver good economic growth, so to make our economy stronger, and then to increase opportunities for all, so looking at very much the inclusive agenda. So those 3 things are our overall ambitions, which everything that the combined authority aims to do will need to contribute towards. And sort of around all of that really is a support for health and well-being in all our communities. So health and well-being very much a cross theme within the context of a framework. In that diagram in the centre, the darker green colour, there's 8 themes, and at the centre of the framework is great places, and it's great places with an S intentionally, because it's not just about a single place called York and North Yorkshire, it's places within. And certainly within a York context, that's not just about York as a city centre, it's about the neighbourhoods and Acomb, for example, and so on. So it's more than just a place. So great places are those places really where, when you're starting to look at particular activities, it starts to address those other 7 themes. So it's where you've got that connection, but places being very much central. The other 7 themes are around a well-connected economy, which is around accessible, affordable transport and efficient and effective digital connectivity. A thriving workforce, which is around stronger careers and skills pathways and the skills agenda generally. Housing, which is around increasing affordable and sustainable housing. Culture and heritage, which is really around how we can strengthen our assets around culture and heritage for economic gain and growth. Productive and innovative economy, which is really about, in some ways, our existing businesses and how we can make them much stronger, more innovative and productive. A global economy, which is really around both attracting new investment into the region, but also about businesses exporting around the world and increasing that side of things. But in particularly capitalising some of the high potential sectors that we are starting to see within the context of York and North Yorkshire, which includes things around the bioeconomy, the rail industry, advanced manufacturing, health. So there's a number of sectors that starts to appear which have got real global significance. And then finally, the green and circular economy, which is primarily around enhancing our natural capital, because to achieve carbon negative in a region, we need to do a lot around our natural capital, not only to enhance it, but to invest further in it. And also create a sustainable energy sector. So very much a big opportunity in this area for green energy. So that's the framework. Open to any questions. Oh, sorry, just on where this goes next. We aim to pull together comments from various different, so it's in a sort of consultation process now. We will bring together the framework and present it back to the Combined Authority Committee. So it won't be the Joint Committee because it's now the Combined Authority after today. And that would be in about March to agree. But as I say, as Catherine said as well, it's just a framework at this stage. There's a lot more detail to come when we get into the main economic strategy work.
Thank you very much. Are there any further contributions you want to contribute?
Just the importance of scrutiny, really. So we had the first official meeting of the Combined Authority today. Not a mayoral combined authority yet, but we are a combined authority now. All of this pre-work was done as a joint committee, and that joint committee was of York and North Yorkshire. So yes, represented by the leader and deputy leaders of both authorities, but with other members of those authorities coming in and building this framework. There is I know it's a very straightforward and simple diagram, and it's a bit motherhood and apple pie in terms of sort of what's on there. But there has been quite a lot of thought and a lot of work that's gone into it to get to the point that we're at. And there is some detail, little bits of detail beneath it. The essence, though, is it's what we agree on in York and North Yorkshire between the two authorities and the teams that came there, including some of the people that were working for the LEP that's now being subsumed into the combined authority. So these are sort of points of agreement that are helping steer us, because there are some monies that are currently available and being spent that came through devolution, and we also need to be thinking about pipeline projects going forward so that we're ready to spend the money when it arrives with the mayor. So that we don't waste any time in getting that investment into our region. So that's where it's coming from. The point about scrutiny is that I was on the combined authority meeting today, and all of the feedback that we got from the scrutiny committees in York and North Yorkshire about the constitution was fed into that meeting, and about half of the points that were raised were incorporated there and then into the constitution, and the other half need a little bit more thought because we only got the final list last week. So there will be a report based upon the scrutinies of the constitution coming back to the combined authority, and it will change the constitution, so as it already has. So what we get back from the scrutinies for the economic framework will change the economic framework. So, you know, this is not just a tick box exercise or a talking shop. This can really influence the way that the economic framework is taken forward. So greatly appreciate any input.
Thanks ever so much. So do we have any questions? I've got Councillor Nelson, Councillor Whitcroft and Councillor Fenton so far. So Councillor Ben Burton. Okay. Councillor Nelson, would you like to fire away?
Thank you. It's a very pretty diagram. It's more of a question really, because this isn't my strong suit, sort of economic strategy, I have to admit. But it struck me that there's nothing directly related to tourism on this. It might be that it's hidden under some of those other headlines, but I'm just aware that tourism isn't always perhaps an attractive thing on your economic growth when you're thinking about the low paid jobs that are associated with tourism. And obviously there's a lot of things on here about stronger careers and pathways for people into skilled jobs, which is really important. But equally, tourism is really fundamental to York and North Yorkshire. So how does kind of growing our tourist economy, or what it is at the moment, how does that fit into this?
I think in two ways really. One is, I think we see tourism as part of one of the core sectors for our economy. So under the productive and innovative economy part, we would want to see the growth of not only existing businesses in that sector, but how you can start to attract more businesses in that sector if required. So that's where we would see the tourism sector fitting in as a key core sector. I think also there's the section within culture and heritage where we would very much see about the investment in the future in the product itself, and how you can start to develop that product further. So I think that's what starts to come beneath this when you start to get into the activities and actions.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a more general question, and Councillor Nelson's question touched on it a little bit, and Councillor Cobain spoke about it a bit earlier. I am a little concerned relating the combined authorities' economic strategy. I think there's no denying that we are different when it comes to North Yorkshire and the City of York. And I just want to make sure really that within the strategy, I appreciate Councillor Cobain talked about points of agreement, and this is based on the goodwill that we've got towards wanting to make this work, and I know that we all do. But I am a little, as I say, concerned that due to our very significant economic differences in terms of the sectors, in terms of our geography, in terms of the kind of workforce and kind of work that we each do, that an economic strategy will be hard to bring together due to those varying factors. Can we ensure, as a part of this framework, and where specifically when this framework did this come through, that both York, speaking as a York council, but for North Yorkshire as well, to make sure that we have an appropriate check and balance against one another to ensure that there isn't an economic strategy that just suits North Yorkshire, or indeed vice versa. And how are we going to look at using this framework to overcome some of the economic strategy disagreements that I'm afraid we are almost certainly going to have?
I'll give a political answer to that, Councillor Whitcroft, and then the officers can give the strategic answers. What's been eye-opening about this sort of journey that we've been on through the joint committee and now the combined authority is how much we have in common between York and North Yorkshire. And I think it would be fair to say that I was coming at it from the angle that you're coming at it maybe a year ago, with preset ideas about what the North Yorkshire economy was about. But actually, our issues are the same, and they are affordable housing, they are transport, they are good, well-paid, sustainable jobs. You know, and those issues are the same if you're in Scarborough or if you're in Acomb. And they're the challenges that we've got now. The answers to those questions, particularly in transport, might be different due to the geography and the size of, I mean, North Yorkshire's biggest county in is it the UK or just biggest county in England? There might be one in Scotland that's a bit bigger. And I'm sure there are also people around this table who will happily tell you it's the best county in England, and it's a very, very lovely place. But anyway, sorry. But by and large, it is about, you know, people being able to get to work and get home from work. You know, it is about those jobs being of high value and, you know, sustainable and into the future. So one of the nice things about this whole process is that those barriers really have broken down a lot. So now when we look at York, and York will be the economic powerhouse of the region for sure. You know, it's the biggest city with the biggest economy in the region. But the benefits of that can be for York as well as for North Yorkshire. We can now think less about where the boundary is, where we're locating businesses or houses, or when we're thinking about transport links. We don't just have to stop at the boundary, you know. And I think that actually throws up quite a lot of opportunity for us. You know, if you're going to do, I don't know, seaweed farming off the east coast, you know, which actually there's some stuff underway with that, which is really good. Then sort of the tech and the innovation and the science behind that's probably going to be based in York, but the farm's going to be out in the North Sea. You know, so those two things coming together is real opportunity.
Just to add one point to that, I think it's very much about functional economy, isn't it? And the fact that actually businesses don't think in local government boundaries. So, you know, where people travel for a job in York, they won't necessarily live in York, and vice versa. And we were talking about Make It York earlier, and I know one of they've got a lot of members outside of the York City boundary, so, you know, who pay in as a York member because they associate themselves as a York business, even though they're the other side of the boundary. So I think I agree with Councillor Kilbane that it almost gives us a chance to look beyond our administrative boundary and work with the businesses as they see York and North Yorkshire. And I think the point Andrew made, particularly about the great places, it's recognising that it's not one homogenous place, it's not two homogenous places as in York and North Yorkshire, it's lots of different places. We've got a lot of similarities in our economy with Harrogate, for example, in terms of sectors, you know, those affordable housing issues, etc. So a lot of commonality, and I think the way we've tried to approach this is, as Councillor Kilbane says, to look for those common areas. Tourism, for example, is a common sector. So yeah, lots of opportunity, I think. Sorry, Andrew.
I don't think I can add any more to what's been said, to be honest. So I'll, if that's okay, we'll go with it.
Just one more thing. There's something that really struck me. You know that we are grappling in York with the difference in life expectancy and outcomes and health outcomes between, we would say, like from Cottonmouth to Westfield. There's a huge difference in life expectancy and health outcomes. North Yorkshire struggles with exactly the same thing, but they see the line as going from Helmsley to Scarborough. You know, but they are essentially the same issues, just on a bigger geographical scale.
Sorry, can I make one more point?
Of course.
I suppose my only other point is that this isn't to replace our own economic strategies. So the local authorities will still have their own economic strategies for place. This is about where it makes sense to join up and where we can access greater powers and hopefully greater funding for the area by joining up together. So, thank you.
Okie dokie, thank you ever so much. So I've got Councillor Fenton next, and then Councillor Ben Burton, and I note you want a question, Councillor Healy.
Thank you. I think what's been put forward is a kind of good starting point. There's nothing in there that I would disagree with. I was having a look at CYC's economic strategy to see, well, is there anything missing from this? And there's nothing really missing. I suppose the only things that maybe are not as apparent in this, the combined authority strategy, is something around collaboration and cooperation between businesses, and it's probably maybe covered under the innovative economy heading, but something on that. And it may be that when the business committee of the combined authority gets underway, that's the kind of thing it will do. But obviously we're still at an early stage, so we don't know how that's going to pan out. I suppose the other thing was around kind of ethical business, and our economic strategy refers to the good business charter city status. So again, I would expect in due course there to be something in the fuller version of the strategy, something around the way we do business, as well as all of the good stuff here, with none of which is wrong. They're the only observations I had, really.
Yeah, I think in terms of both of those, I think once, as we're developing this framework down to a sort of more of a what and a how basis, those types of things will start to appear. And I think already in some of the discussions we're having, certainly collaboration, partnership work, in certain ways in which we operate across between businesses is starting to come through as something that we need to be upfront about in terms of the strategy. So we pick up those points as part of that discussion.
Just, if I may, Chair, then, I mean, certainly, you know, for us, good economic growth includes ethical economic growth, but of course, there can be arguments around what's ethical and what's not. In fact, ethics is one of the things people argue about quite a lot, isn't it? So I guess this has been put together by the Joint Committee, which is now the Combined Authority. When the Mayor arrives, they will be one of 5, and 4 of those 5 have already agreed this sort of framework in draft, subject to feedback from consultation. I guess the issues will really start to happen if the Mayor arrives and says that they want to start fracking, and they've got the powers to do it, and we might turn around and say, hang on a minute, well, I think York by and large is on the record very firmly of being against fracking, and we might say, well, that's not good economic growth, and they might argue, yes, it is, it's just whatever, you know. I think that's where potentially the framework will be tested, but that depends upon who's elected Mayor, of course, and whether or not they're in support of things that we may disagree with.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ben Burton.
Yeah, two questions. First one's a quick one. I guess I noticed it in the York one, and I guess it's a sector that we aren't probably very strong in at the moment, but there is a massive amount of coverage of, I guess, what you'd call digital economy, and that being such a major aspect of where the world will be going forwards, and whether we just need to, while it might not be one of our strengths, make sure that it's still part of our agenda, because it's not an area, if you fall behind on it, then it's still something that we're going to need. And I suspect the majority of businesses soon will move towards, you know, almost a purely digital economy in some ways, and we risk being left behind if we don't include that in there. The other one was, I just wanted to pick your brains on housing. Obviously, housing makes up a big part of the economic strategy. Affordable housing delivery is probably of such importance that it'll be its own major part of the strategy. How does this economic strategy overlap with, I guess, housing strategy as its own thing for the mayoral combined authority?
On the digital economy is critical across the board on the strategy, and certainly within both the productive and innovative economy part and the global economy. The digital as a sector has certainly been identified as critically important, particularly around creative. And I think it was mentioned earlier about the UNESCO, is that side of things have been brought up. On housing, and I think this is the case for all these headings. It's very much building on the existing plans and strategies of the local authorities. So where you've got your own housing strategies, we don't intend to repeat doing another housing strategy over the top of that. What we would want to do is to look at those common themes that go across, and where we can then use the combined authorities' influence in terms of discussions with Homes England and government to actually get more investment in to address your own local housing issues. So we very much rely very much on the local strategies. I sort of see this as being a framework that's developed from local input, coming to a combined authority to start to pick out those things that are common and also add value to what you're trying to do. And then delivery will be very much down at the local level again. So it almost goes from local to combined authority back to local in some sense.
Just quickly, I did mention to Callum that I might have to leave in about 10 minutes, but I didn't tell you. So if I disappear, it was advert.
No worries. Thanks for letting us know. So I've got three questions left. One from Councillor Healy, Councillor Hook, and then Councillor Stewart. So fantastic. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome when you said again that the transport will be helped by it being an amalgamated authority, combined authority, because that obviously helps everyone right on the outskirts. And similarly, when you said that York is very similar to Harrogate in some ways, there are some villages in Greater York that also have great similarities with other villages in North Yorkshire. And certainly during COVID, a lot of the villages in York were actually going to places like Cattle and Longmarston and to actually survive, as it were, during the lockdown. So all that sort of thing that needs to be brought out as well, because there will be village issues very much within York.
Yeah, just on that, I think what's a real opportunity for combined authority is where, particularly around rural issues and villages, and there's there's a very much similarity between Haxby and some of the market towns and Acomb and some of the market towns and so on. I think you can start to look at those common themes and where there's a lot of work going on in North Yorkshire on how you address some of the rural issues around villages that can be then used to actually help and support villages around the city of York.
Just to support that really. So, that's certainly something that comes up time and again in terms of connectivity and broadband. So, there's no reason these days why you can't have a little factory in your garage if you've got a 3D printer making goods to sell, so long as your broadband connection is good and stable for you to do it. So, in terms of where people work and how they work, I think if we are certainly expansive in our thinking, but that actually relies on infrastructure and trying to work out what's the best way of doing that. Is it cabling? Is it satellites? How do you make that work? But the connectivity is going to be crucial for people.
Thank you very much. So we've got last but not least, we've got Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, Councillor Whitcroft made an interesting point about, York and different places. I think if I was sat in Harrogate, that's probably the one place where I start to feel a bit left out, maybe. And I'm sure it won't pan out this way, but, we've got York and North Yorkshire, it almost feels a bit like York and everyone else. And Harrogate will be sort of sat there saying, well, we're not that much smaller than York and everything like that. But it's obviously all, as we say, very high level. So, understandably, there's not much detail because clearly you're going to have a mayor in a few months' time, whoever they are, and they're going to influence it. So totally get that. I think it's very positive. It's a trivial thing, but that we talk about carbon negative. I don't understand why that's so rarely used, why we talk as about carbon neutral, as though we can, just get to that magic level and then we can carry on. I think for me, that's all about, do some bad to negate some good. It should be about this fundamental negative thing. My question is obviously we heard all about what York brings, what North Yorkshire brings. The thing I think would be the obvious thing to do, and I'm sure it has been done, but just to check, is to look at all that's gone before. Look at every other devolved area and look at who's got what right and who's got what wrong. I'd certainly be interested in hearing more about some of the things maybe devolved areas have gone into and it's not really worked out from a sort of value for money and everything like that. And it's probably not easy for you to sort of say, oh yeah, Manchester did this or whatever it may be, but just to understand that work has been done, and I guess how that's being looked at by the relevant people, be they political or officer.
I think from our perspective, it's been an absolutely critical part of the work to get to this stage, both in the economic framework and other elements within this framework. So, for example, there are cross-devolution groups with other skills departments of combined authorities to look at how the adult education budget will be devolved, what's worked, what hasn't worked, how have they been done. So from a very practical operational side, there's that discussion. From a strategic side, very much a similar sort of talk around how have you set your frameworks together, how have you worked with different partners, how have you engaged with the local authorities, what works and what doesn't work in that context. So we've talked very much to from all of them really, but certainly from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and Greater Manchester, who are slightly bigger players in this game, bigger areas, to Tees Valley, who are a similar size but very different type of economy. North of the Tyne have been very helpful on that, and then there's also some new devolution areas such as East Midlands. There'll be the Hull and East Riding area, as it was announced in the autumn statement. There's Norfolk and Suffolk, which has got similarities to a York geography in a sense of a Norwich city and then a surrounding rural. So we are in discussions with all of those on working groups to then feed that into this piece of work and other parts of the combined authority work.
I'm happy to just very well speak, obviously, I always am, aren't I? So apologies for that. Certainly I've spent quite a bit of time looking at transport and how that's working in West Yorkshire and over in Manchester. And it's all eyes on Manchester now really to see how that franchising is working out there. Obviously the geography here is very different. Also looking at just the clout, you know, being at West Yorkshire Combined Authority meetings, and just the clout, your economic clout that it gives you to try and attract inward investment. Okay, it didn't work out too well with the HS2 line, but you know, just that sort of bio industries that they're and the tech industries that they're managing to pull in, and the investment that they're managing to pull in. I think what we have to be careful of is that things don't just all get centralised or sucked into one place. I think we have to keep a mind on that. We are a combined authority between the whole of York and North Yorkshire, and I think both authorities need to be mindful of that going forward, because I think where it hasn't worked so well, and I think there's a couple of combined authorities down south where it didn't work out so well, or it's not working out as well as it could do. I think a lot of that is due to the politics of it, and I think in terms of the politics for this, all parties have to see the bigger picture. You know, they have to see the benefits that this can bring to the whole region, because the bottom line is we can't solve these problems on our own. I mean, we will do all we can in our 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 16 years, whatever it is that we get, that the good people of York decide to give us. We'll do all we can to try and solve the housing crisis. But within a 4-year term, we're not going to do that. So we can only do that in conjunction with North Yorkshire and partners. No, and also starting to think broadly as well. We do quite a lot of work linking up with Transport for the North and you know, the Labour mayors across the north of England, and Andy Street, the Tory mayor in Birmingham's got sort of West Midlands has got some great policies and programmes. But we do a lot of that linking up. When you look at West Yorkshire's sort of transport system and how much it costs, and you just think, oh, I want a bit of that, really, you know. So what can we do to work more closely with them to see what we can do about making it cheaper and more reliable to move around the whole region? You just broad to mind. There's no reason why the north of England should not be have as much GVA as the northwest of Holland. You know, it's about the same size. But you know, Holland is far more productive and has far bigger economy than the north of England. You know, the north needs to rise. We've got all we need. We just need to get on and do it.
Brilliant. Thank you very so much. One question from myself, if I may, and it's a slightly cheeky question, I suppose, is around, you know, this economic framework is obviously a joint effort between York and North Yorkshire. How much in practice will it, and I don't want to say the word restrict because the mayor will have their own democratic mandate, but how much will it ground them to ensure that our own democratic mandates as a council are respected, and how much leeway will it leave the mayor?
I think, well, obviously the mayor once elected, is a directly elected mayor, so they have a very strong mandate from the people who've elected them, you know, and we need to be conscious of that. However, the combined authority is made up of 5 members, which to represent the 2 constituent authorities and the mayor. And the mayor has a right of veto in some areas, so, you know, potentially could stop things from happening. So it's incumbent on all of us when we get to that point to all work together to make sure we deliver what is needed for the people of York and North Yorkshire, and that we don't just follow our own sort of personal agendas.
I was going to leave it for the political answer rather than an officer answer, but I think there's something in the fact that of the word combined, and I think I always go back to the fact that there is 3 authorities as part of this, and all 3 authorities need to be working together for the common good for the economy of York and North Yorkshire. And hopefully, where possible, that'll work. Now, unlike Manchester, where you've got 10 authorities and the mayor, we've only got 3. Now, that could be a big fallout, or it could be easier to negotiate between the parties. But hopefully, it's about combining our efforts. So it's not about combined authority going off and doing something against the will of the local authority or vice versa. It's about us all working together for the growth of the economy.
Thank you ever so much for your time. I'll go on then, very quickly.
Okay, sorry. Would it be fair to say that of the 3, it takes 1 to say no to stop anything, but to move anything forward, all 3 have to say yes? Because on the Constitution, there seemed to be very little that the mayor could actually do off his own bat. And I think the only 2 examples I saw was bus franchising and fracking. So everything else, I think would that be fair to say? Summation?
I don't think fracking is specifically mentioned in the Constitution. Well, you know, there are powers for compulsory purchase for energy requirements, for example, which could be interpreted as fracking. No, it is set up for those sort of checks and balances, really, to make sure that we don't all just bang our heads against the wall, that we actually sit down and get on and do the things that need to be done for the whole region. And that is the way that the system is set up.
I think when we've spoken to a lot of the other combined authorities, and obviously the relationships is quite a critical part of making this work. It comes down to then negotiation and discussions rather than simply getting to a combined authority meeting and the mayor suggesting something and your local authority just stopping it, but about those 3 authorities working closely together at all times in making things happen. So yes, in strictly speaking, it could be one of the authorities could veto something, the combined authority could veto something, but ultimately, when you discuss it with other combined authorities, they do have their differences between the local authorities. They do sometimes have the differences with the mayor, but ultimately, it's about then getting around the table and having those discussions about how you can resolve some of those issues.
Thank you very so much. So the report says that we are to obviously consider the report and provide any feedback. So are there any items of feedback that we want to sort of note or put on record? I've got other than what we've already said. Okay, I'll move on to the next end. Thank you ever so much for your time and for coming this evening. Sorry, it's gone on a bit late, but yes, I should get back to the agenda. So moving on to agenda item 7, which is the work plan. Have we got any, okay, we've got one from Councillor Whitcroft, and I know that Councillor Fenton has something he wanted to say as well. So.
Thank you, Chair. I did just want to request that we seek officer advice regarding the meeting we have on the 25th of April, whether that falls within the pre-election period of the Mayoral Combined Authority and whether that will affect our ability to meet, and whether it's worth a rescheduling.
Robert, can I bring you in?
I'll need to double check, mainly because with it being not our election, but the combined authorities, I know there's some meetings that can go ahead depending on the actual items that are being looked at, so I'll need to double check.
Are you happy for us to take that away and for perhaps Callum?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as members are informed, members of the committee are informed, and I'm sure we won't be the only committee impacted by this. So it'd be good to know what the standard procedure will be. But thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fender, I know you wanted to bring the issue of dial-a-ride.
Just in the context of task and finish groups, and it's something I discussed with Councillor Taylor at end of last week. Just to seek members' views as to whether there'll be any interest in setting up a hopefully quite brief and focused task and finish group looking at community transport in terms of looking at other areas and other authorities for examples of where a community transport operation is in place that provides a service similar to that was provided by Dial and Ride. As members may be aware, York Wheels have had to cease operating the Dial and Ride service, which we don't need to discuss that here. But in terms of looking forwards, there's potentially something productive we can do in terms of doing a bit of research and maybe speaking to colleagues in the bus forum and elsewhere to say, so we can gather information to then feed into officers. So as and when they're looking at whether the council wants to look to commission an alternative service to that, which obviously is no longer in operation. We've had the opportunity to do a bit of research and say, well, here are some examples of where there is a similar service, either whether it's run by a charitable organisation, by a commercial organisation, to what extent does the local authority run it or subsidise it? We won't come up with all the answers, but I think given the sort of the interest in the topic, that the service that was available now isn't, it seems something that would be productive for us to do, and hopefully we can come up with some useful information. So I would like to suggest that ask members to support that proposition and seek volunteers.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Yeah, certainly something that's close to my own heart, and I've had a couple of residents in touch with me, devastated that their weekly social club has been cut, really. So, Councillor Stewart, do you want to raise a point?
Excellent idea. I volunteer to help.
Excellent. Do we have any other volunteers?
I would volunteer. I think it's a really good idea, especially as well, there aren't enough accessible taxis, despite every effort that's been made within the council to recruit accessible taxis.
Well, it sounds like we've got two, and Councillor sounds like we've got two very keen volunteers in Councillor Stewart and Councillor Burton, alongside yourself, Councillor Fenton, presumably.
I just wanted to, I also had a task and finish group that I've spoken to Councillor Taylor about that I wanted to kind of suggest, but so I was just waiting till, but I'm glad you've got lots of volunteers and that sounds like a good piece of work to do.
So, I mean, that's also something I'm very interested in as well. So I think, but whether we need 3 or 4 members, but I think, yeah.
You know, I'm not precious about being on it. I just want, you know,
you always
no, seriously, I'm not. Seriously, no. I was more concerned that it happens, but you know, so I'll speak to Councillor Pearson. One of us will be the Lib Dem rep.
Not wanting to blow your trumpet too loudly, Councillor Fenton, but I think you'd be an excellent member of that, because I'm not saying Councillor Pearson wouldn't, and the numbers doesn't bother me, but I think Councillor Fenton, you'll be excellent on that subcommittee, sorry.
Excellent. We will formalise the task and finish alongside the Callum and Councillor Taylor, sorry.
Yeah, I think as well, I think Councillor Taylor was hoping to have sort of even just like a page or 2 brief that could go on to like one of the work plan items at some point, outlining what the objectives were going to be. So I think we can probably kind of do that, and maybe even if we've already got members, we could almost have it already written on there at the next meeting.
I think the member, if we resolve that the members of this new committee come up with a 1-pager of aims, objectives, outputs, that should be doable
for approval by the wider committee. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Councillor Stewart, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, it's just not wanting to get lost in a vast bureaucracy, really, because we had the meeting about sort of 8 months ago, looking at what we'd look at scrutiny task group wise, and we haven't looked at any yet, despite loads being in the mix. So I'm just keen to crack on as soon as possible. I attended the online briefing about dial-a-ride and found it interesting. For me, there's lots of questions. So if we're going to do a brief to come back at the next meeting for that to then be okayed, and for me, it just drags on and on and on. I would just say we have 3 councillors, get round a table together. Councillor Fenton as chair buys us cakes, as part of it. And then, I think the aims could be defined quite easily now, which is just to as being said, look at the alternatives for community transport, what works elsewhere, be it by a private or a charity operator. And I would suggest we approve that remit today. And I say that very much on the basis that we won't be looking for vast officer time. I think that's the key thing. If we're going to be looking for vast officer time, we need to demonstrate the need. But if we're just going to go away and look into it, then we don't. It's 3 individuals meeting up to do this recreational activity of looking at local bus services.
I mean, if you're asking for us to vote on it, I mean, I'm happy to support that. We need a seconder. Got Councillor Fenter seconding, right? Are we all in favour?
Sorry, I'm not entirely clear what we're deciding to vote on there. What was the specific motion regarding that? Just that we immediately move to establishing
So
a
we start
subcommittee.
task group tonight with 3 of us, or potentially 4 or 5, whatever it may be, and we're very mindful it's going to be member-led rather than officer-led, and the remit is about looking into alternatives around the country of commercial, private, or charity funded community transport schemes like dial-a-ride, which obviously is going to be no more.
Can I just suggest that you deal with this with the chair? Like, it's great, you've got a task and finish group, suggested, you've got 3 volunteers. I don't necessarily think we need to vote on anything. And you were the one that said you wanted to end the endless bureaucracy or something like that. Why don't you just have a few emails with the chair, and then we can
My understanding from a very brief conversation with Councillor Taylor was that he was more than happy for this to go ahead. It'd been a very topical and relevant thing. So I would say we go ahead with this task and finish group, but on the basis that a 1-pager comes to this committee, just to outline the remit of what you are looking at. That would be my caveat. All in favour? Marvellous. Thank you ever so much. So, Councillor Nelson, I believe you had another item.
Yes, this is something that I'm quite keen to get some scrutiny on, but it may be that it wants to wait until you guys have come back. I'm happy with that. But I would really like to see some scrutiny on the implementation of fibre optic cables in the city. I'm aware of a resident who has had major issues with the installation of the fibre optic cable in his garden, it not being buried properly, it being left on the surface of the ground, which is in itself a health and safety hazard. This particular resident had issues around the fact that the installation was done by a subcontractor rather than City Fibre, who are the actual licensed contractors. There's been an awful lot of passing the buck. He's written quite a comprehensive report about it. And went all the way to the Ombudsman and back without them fixing the problem. And it's after about a year and an awful lot of energy and hassle that they came and installed that cable correctly. Now, it may be that that's just one resident who's had a really awful experience. But my concern is that may be something that more and more councillors have heard about, that may be more widespread. And I just think that it's something that I'm not entirely sure, if I'm honest, what the best way would be to approach this, because I think the piece of work that needs doing is as much about assessing how many of the however many cables that have been installed, how many residents have had problems. That seems to be the bit of data that I'm not aware exists. I have had some conversations with the council. And I just think it's really important. This is infrastructure. These cables are supposed to go in and stay in the same way that phone lines do, and the underfloor infrastructure. If they're not being fitted properly now, or they weren't when they were put in, and they've been put in inadequately, I think we need to be aware of that as a council. So that's my kind of pitch, I suppose. I'll leave it to the committee. I think you don't want probably too many task and finish groups running at the same time, unless and obviously we're missing a couple of members as well. So
Yeah. Robert, do you have any thoughts on how we should take that forward?
To be honest, no.
So
I don't know.
I'd be happy to come back to this at the next meeting.
Yeah,
If you'd like.
I think if you were able to, yeah, probably bring something back, because I guess that the item could almost also just be a report if unless there's something specific that committee members are going to be going out to do and explore. Or is it something that you'd need sort of perhaps council officers and maybe is it City Fibre they're installing it to come here and outline what they've been doing?
I mean, I think probably want to take away to have a conversation with the chair, yourself, and work out how we want to add it to future agendas. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Thank you.
Marvellous. Councillor Chambers.
Councillor Fenton.
Just in support of that, I know that somebody in the ward, got in touch at the weekend about a very nasty fall that had happened, and the pavement had been disturbed and not put back probably about a year ago by the installation of fibre broadband, which is linked to that, and it's too far away from it happening now to do anything about it. That's so I think there is a problem not only with it not being buried, but with rectifying the pavement, and I think there was 4 falls mentioned.
Yeah, no, I think it's been an issue in a lot of wards. Councillor Fenton.
Just say at the corporate scrutiny next week, we've got an item on the switch over from analog to digital, and so we might touch on this in the margins of that discussion. But I think it is something that I think it lends itself very well to a task and finish group, because no one's really clear where responsibility begins and ends. The council has some responsibility in terms of ensuring that there's a proper restoration done after any verges or driveways or footpaths or roads are dug up. But then when you try and go around the labyrinth of service providers, contractors, subcontractors, it's no wonder if councillors and residents give up, saying, well, I don't know what to do with this. So I think it would be a very valuable piece of work to just improve our understanding and potentially our influence to stop these things happening, because they'll keep happening.
Marvellous. Any other items? Excellent. So the final item is urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business. Excellent. That brings this meeting to a close.